So I watched Sound of Freedom yesterday. They had it in the Everyman Cinema. Wasn't supposed to come to England, but I was shocked, surprised when I saw that it had. There was a lot of reports on YouTube saying that it was all about exposing the elites and their sort of sick sex ritual practices with children and stuff like this. And yeah, after watching this film, I'm just like, did those people actually watch this film, or did they just say this because they liked the narrative of what they were saying? And yeah, I think things like that is an exact example of what Christians do. You know, they read certain bits in the Bible and like the narrative of what it's saying, and then try and come up with, a scenario for it. There's a lot of talk about the daily sacrifice being taken away. I'm pretty sure the daily sacrifice is talking about me, but no, they keep making it out. Oh, it's the red heifers. They're trying to sacrifice animals in the temple, and that's going to start. And as soon as that starts, that time is near because they're going to take it away because Jesus is going to come. I don't know, so much, and at the end of the day, they just don't know what they're talking about. And yeah, the Sound of Freedom is it's very sad, definitely, because it looks at the bad end of child abuse. I feel like when it comes to child abuse, it happens, but there's so many different degrees of the extent of what happens. This is like people say first degree, second degree murder, and third degree murder. But I think in reality, there's so many different varieties. You could be drunk and accidentally kill someone. Now that might count as second or third degree murder. But you have to also ask, how drunk were they? Were they just a little bit over the limit? Were they completely over the limit? Was there an excuse for why they felt the need to drive, and what was the, how bad do they feel about it? And then you also need to look at who they've killed and why. And some people would just say the outcome is the same. If the outcome is the same, then it doesn't matter about anything else. And a lot of people are like that. And yeah, when it comes to child abuse, I feel like most of it is just loose, small stuff. Maybe that's just me being naive, but I think most child abuse might just be, I don't know, convincing a child to take their clothes off and take pictures or something, or just fingering or whatever. But it's bad. Okay, I'm not saying it's good. It's all bad. But yeah, that is very different to pinning a child down, beating them up, and having sex with them. That there's very different varieties of it, and some might say, that grooming a child into agreeing to have sex with you and beating them up and forcing that, is kind of the same thing because the outcome is the same, and it's very, very different. Grooming is bad, but it, the child doesn't see it as being such a bad thing, hence they don't suffer as much. And if they don't suffer as much, then the crime is not is different to them suffering. And I feel like yeah, they made some flaws though in the story, because they set up this sort of trap. They know who the children's sex slaves or children's sex sellers are, the traffickers are, and they have this. They pretend to have a party and saying, "Hey, we want 50 kids." I don't know if this is a true story or not. Did they actually do this? Did they actually make a sting party where they got these child sellers to, to set up this party for pedophiles? But the thing is, by doing that, they might, if this was a true story, they might have actually put those children in danger. I've had this conversation with someone before, about why don't they set up stings and stuff, and they said by telling a child sex offender, we want to buy 50 kids, they might just go onto the streets and just nick kids for the sake of this party, rather than go to kids who've already been abused or already in the trafficking system. They might just kidnap new kids and put those kids' lives in danger. Some kids are going to retaliate and get angry, and that might cause a fight, and that might cause some of them to die. So you don't really know what's going to happen if you set up a sting like they did in the film, where they got this group to say, hey, send us 50 kids. You don't know by doing that, are you putting more kids' lives in danger? The kids that aren't actually in the trafficking system right now, um, and are going to be in because of this huge amount of money that you're going to pay these traffickers or to do this act, and so yeah, that's one flaw that wasn't necessarily said. I don't know if it was said very at the very end. I had to go off at the. I don't know if there was credits, but I would have loved to know if that sting was real. How many of those kids were already in the trafficking system, and how many of them were just literally just taken off the streets like a week before, a few days before? Um, because yeah, I mean, sex trafficking for me is the lowest of the low, and child sex trafficking is even lower than that. But there are, you know, there is completely different levels of this. Um, Convincing a child to want to do this is different from literally forcing and beating them up. And it's a very sad case what happened to the girl that they were mostly tracing because she was sold into after a lot of abuse, it seemed like she was sold to a tribal group. And yeah, the tribal groups are the lowest of the low. They live in small little small little villages. The thing is, though, they don't have money because they live in small little villages and have no form of economy. Violence is their only form of money. So if they were to buy a child, children, it would be fairly expensive, and they're going to have to probably kill and rob a lot of banks, or not of banks, maybe just one bank, but kill or rob a lot of people to gain the money to buy a child. Um, but yeah, that's it's sad because the people were saying that it was mostly child abusers is like the elites and the rich, and that's just not that's not the truth. And I feel like this film actually shows that, because one of the ladies who was supposed to be selling children, they you know this guy who was trying to, like, find out which children, where the children are and stuff, this guy that he was speaking to said that, oh, you have to know her because she only does this to close neighbors and friends, and she only talks to people about this situation to close people. But the thing is, though, this is a poor village. The whole town would have been poor. No one would have had that much money. And therefore, the fact that she does that means that she's probably not very rich. She's probably not making very much money. She's probably a horrible, cruel person who has probably had shit done to her during her upbringing. And, monsters are formed by other monsters making them, usually, like, not always. But I feel like if it's not obvious in their current life that why they would turn into such a horrible person, I feel like something in their past life would have done that. If I have a really strong death wish, if I die and can come back to life, in a rich family, in a nice, with parents that care more about me, with parents that can help me get a job and make me have a good life, I feel like I will always have this strong death wish because of what I've gone through in this life. I think my death wish will never disappear, not even in my next life, or probably not even the year after that. And monsters are made, and I feel like, yeah, whatever the reason why someone is, on the surface you might not see, but yeah, um, tribal groups are pretty much the worst of the worst. That's why they're born into tribal groups, because they are more like animals. They they have savage ways. They don't they don't like society and the rules, and trying to tell these people that reincarnation is the truth, they will just ignore you. So those groups are the lowest of the low. And buying a child, um, whilst knowing that they're just going to turn them into a slave, that's they would do that because they know that they're the lowest of the low, and therefore they will do the lowest of the low, because they will look at the child as being something lower than them. So I feel like that's a really sad case. If that happens, if children get sold to these kind of people, it is a really sad case, um, especially if the child would have had a much better future in some other situations. Although I'm sure it sometimes can work in the reversal. Sometimes kidnappers can kidnap kids from these extremely poor ritual groups, what's it, tribal groups, and then take them into the city, promise them better life, better future, better everything, um, when really it just turns into abuse. But I don't know. I don't know what to say because um, it's sad. I mean, I don't think it's got anything to do with rich people. You know, people who get involved in child stuff, child sexual abuse. I don't believe that they're superly rich. I think they're people who are depressed and miserable and haven't achieved much, and turn to, I don't know, the idea of sleeping with something innocent. Um, and then, but the thing is, I think they would want the child to stay innocent. So I do feel like they wouldn't cause too much suffering. It wouldn't be more about the suffering. It'd be more about the mental of, you know, getting them to like you, getting them to look up to you, because that's what children do. Children generally look up to adults and see them as, you know, bigger and better. And adults, I guess, that don't have control or don't have a good life, don't have things around that can see a child as being like, wow, you're lower than me, hence I now feel bigger and better. So that's maybe what would be going through their mind. Um, and but yeah, I don't really want to talk about this. You know, it's a subject that I don't want to talk about. But yeah, I do think most child abuse though is loose and not violent. I think when a person gets to like 15, 16, 17, I think things can get a lot worse, more violently because of you know, them rebelling and not wanting to do what people say. Hence, it can turn far more uglier. But I don't know. I don't know.